Everybody, welcome into another edition of Rink Report. I'm Katie Florio from the comfort of my home right now, joined virtually by Tarek El Bashir from the comfort of his very festive Christmas house as well. Tarek, I know you said it's very pretty, but we can't give you the credit. All the credit to your wife, Kim, for all the
Oh yeah.
beautiful displays behind you. But thank you for joining us in a prospect edition of Rink Report today. And Tarek, things look a lot different than they did a few years ago for the Capitals. The way that management staff has been able to create such a successful, deep prospect pool
Yeah.
for the Capitals is something that definitely has to make this organization excited about what the future holds for the Caps and very different from what we were seeing just a few years ago.
Yeah, no doubt, Katie. I mean, I would say 4 years ago or so, I think a lot of fans and observers and media covering the Capitals were kind of braced for the long, cold winter that was going to come after Alex Ovechkin. And kudos to the Capitals management for not only getting the team at the NHL level pointed in the right direction and keeping them as contenders, flinging that window wide open a year ago with an outstanding offseason. But what they've done at the prospect level is nothing short of amazing, too. Because remember, when you make the playoffs every year, just about, you're drafting in the late teens or you're drafting in the early 20s. Like last year's when you're drafting in the late 20s. Like it's hard to get guys who can come in and make an impact right away, like a Ryan Leonard, who was drafted eighth overall. When you're drafting 27th, it's more difficult. But again, credit to Capitals management and their scouting staff, because the Capitals prospect pool in just a short amount of time, a couple of years, went from a bottom third of the league to now, the Athletic and other places rank it in the top 10. And those guys know what they're talking about. And I know we're going to get into World Juniors, which are coming up soon. I'm my favorite time of year. I mean, I like the Stanley Cup playoffs too, but this time of year, I really get into the kiddos playing playing in the World Junior Championships. And look, last year the Capitals had six prospects in the tournament. This year they could have as many as seven prospects. That's going to rank pretty high amongst all the NHL teams in terms of how many players they have representing their countries at the highest level of junior.
Well, you make a good point too, as far as the Capitals not getting first overall, even in the high first rounds. So credit to management that's been able to move the puzzle pieces and still pick up
Yeah.
very successful prospects who are really going to make a difference in this team in the years to come. And we're seeing them from all over. We're seeing them in juniors. We're seeing them from university, of course, Ryan Leonard, what he's been able to do with the team this year. Cole Hudson out of Boston University, another
Yeah.
name that fans get ready. We've already harped on him several times, but the best is yet to come for him. And then, of course, some of the guys down already pro in Hershey. We have a lot to cover today. The talent is coming from all different directions. But as you mentioned today, we're zeroing in on World Juniors, which are right around the corner. And we have a special guest joining us soon to dive into that. But Tarek, from your perspective,
Yep.
of those guys who are about to play in one of the world's most renowned tournaments for these young guys, who are some names that you're looking out for?
You mentioned it right there. I mean, Cole Hudson led Team USA last year in points as a defenseman. We all know who his brother is and the award that he won last year for the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, I can hardly contain my excitement at just what he's going to look like in a Capitals jersey because, I know there's some recency bias and maybe, you talk to people around the team here and you can get really high on your own prospects. But from everything that I'm hearing, this guy is every bit as good as his brother Lane and maybe has a little bit more snarl and physicality to his game. So, I mean, watch out. I would imagine we're going to see Cole here at towards the end of his towards the end of this season whenever BU is done playing. He's going to follow probably in his brother's footsteps and sign after his sophomore year. I mean, that's a guy that I'm looking forward to seeing in this tournament. And there are a handful of other guys. I would say Nicholas Kempf, goaltender for USA. We'll see if he makes the roster and how much he plays. But there are a handful of players that I think Caps fans are going to be able to sit down in front of their TVs during these holidays and go, oh, that's one of our guys because I remember a few years ago when the Caps had like two or three and it was like and they were like fourth liners. It was like I want some guys to cheer for, and now you could have as many as seven. Leon Mugli, another player that I think fans should be excited about. He's been down in Hershey, he's been banged up, but I would imagine in the next couple days we're gonna get a release from the organization saying, good luck to Leon as he heads off to the World Juniors representing Switzerland. So there are a handful of players, and we're gonna get into them, and it's gonna be a lot of fun Boxing Day when everything gets going.
Exactly. I have a quick break from the NHL hockey from the 24th to the 26th, but really it's okay because you have this tournament coming up right after that. So a lot to look forward to as we get into Christmas time. And earlier today, Tark and I had the pleasure of being joined by TSN's Director of Scouting, Craig Button. He was very insightful, a smart mind on all of the prospects combined, everything this tournament has to offer. There was a lot that goes into it, and Tark and I had a great chat with him. Well, we're now pleased to welcome a very special guest, Craig Button, TSN's Director of Scouting to Rink Report. Craig, thank you so much for joining the show. As we were just talking about, there's a lot of excitement around the Capitals prospect pool, whether it's pros, juniors, university, whatever it might be, but more specifically, in the past 4 or 5 years, the way that this organization has been able to build this pool and now the depth that they have. So I want to start big picture with you. Again, thank you for joining us first and foremost. But when you look at the Capitals prospect pool as a whole, what are your first initial thoughts that come to mind?
Well, I think the prospect pool is really, really strong. And when you consider that the Washington Capitals won the Stanley Cup in 2018, they've been a good team. How many teams, push for that Stanley Cup? We call it the window. And how long is your window open? And then when that window closes, what does it mean for your organization? Well, the Washington Capitals have not fallen into that, what I would call that downward slope. And I think that speaks volumes to what Brian McClellan has done and what Chris Patrick has done. Because when you go back and look at it, yeah, they made some moves to strengthen their team, but I go back to the Stanley Cup year. Michael Kepney might not have been a player that a lot of people thought was sexy at the trade deadline, but he was an incredibly important player for their team. Identifying what you needed, identifying key players that didn't cost you a lot. I think that not only helped the Washington Capitals win a Stanley Cup, it also helped them keep their assets, their draft picks, young prospects available to them. And then you go from there and you have a really good scouting department and you identify players. You look at some of the players that they've been able to draft. I mean, Ryan Leonard, that becomes, it's never easy. You're expected to make a good pick there. But you start thinking about Alexei Protas. That's a great pick. And you think about how he comes into the organization, what he's done to this point in time. Now it eases kind of the loss of a Nick Backstrom. Not to you. Nobody ever wants to lose Nick Backstrom. You signed Dylan Strome. Well, now you're not chasing it. You got a good young player in Protas. You got a real good player in Dylan Strome who's found a home in Washington. And you continue to be able to exhibit great patience with your young players. Think about Spencer Carberry, the coach. And I know I'm going in a different direction here. But he was in the Washington Capitals organization. He leaves. He finds experience being a head coach, finds experience coming back to the NHL as an assistant coach. Now the Washington Capitals know him. They say, hey, this is our guy. And I think they do the same thing with the prospects. Logan Thompson started in the Washington Capitals organization. So they don't close the door on people. And they watch, and sometimes you got to go elsewhere to kind of find your footing, develop your whatever your expertise is. In the case of Logan Thompson, goaltending. In the case of Spencer Carberry, coaching. But they've really done a great job of not pushing players ahead before they're ready and being really, really diligent in terms of that development process. Those players under Todd Nelson and Hershey, they won. And so now it just permeates right through the organization. Young players understand what the steps are. And then continuously you have competition with good young players coming in. And trust me, this pipeline, this highway of prospects is not drying up in any way, shape, or form.
Craig, I just tell the people out there how difficult it is to hit on so many draft picks when you're constantly making your first pick, 17, 21, 25, 27. You don't, I mean, when you get Ryan Leonard at 8, okay, like you said, top 10, not an easy pick, but easier than when you're drafting in the 20s.
No question about it. Because when you watch Ryan Leonard, you can see maybe a little bit more of what a guy is closer to being because he's more developed, he's a little
Right.
bit more advanced, and that's why players, they're top players. They've been top at the levels below them. Ryan certainly was. When you start going deeper in the draft, whether it be later in the first round, into the second round, into the third round, you're looking for specific elements and attributes that you feel strongly fit what you're about, and then you believe that you can develop. And that's what they've done a fantastic job of. Think of Martin Faravari. Like, I mean, he wasn't a first round draft pick, but coming over, plays, gets to the minors. I mean, he's a really strong player
Nice.
for the Washington Capitals. He's not flashy, but he's a player that every good team has. And if you don't have those players, you don't identify what they can do. Tarek, a lot of times, and I say this about scouting, it's easy to find the flash and the dash. The flash and the dash is all nice and it looks great on highlight reels, but you need effective players that can do a lot of different things in the game. And I think that the Washington Capitals have done a fantastic job. They're not dismissing skill, they're not dismissing flash and dash, but they're not putting an overemphasis on something that might not translate. And when I say by might not translate, taking one attribute and go, well, we're going to take that attribute. They look at players and go, they have these attributes, and we can integrate them into our lineup and use them in a really good manner where not only can they function, but our team can function to its greatest capability.
Craig, you and Tarek have both mentioned that the Capitals take pride in, I think it was Tarek that used the phrase overcooking the prospects and really giving them that time to develop. How do you think that helps an organization like this when, the outside talk might be, all right, you have these exciting prospects. We're exciting to see what they can do at the highest level, but just the patience that this organization shows and truly knowing, that the long road might pay off after all.
One of the things, Katie, that I continuously say, and there's nothing wrong with it. Everybody wants to be someplace yesterday, and that's wonderful. You have that drive, you have that determination, and I'm just going to use the NHL as an example. I always tell young players, if you're not ready for the NHL, your challenges become even greater. Because if you're not ready, the NHL will chew you up and spit you out like nothing. That's the reality of it. So while players can be impatient and players can feel that they should be there or they should have been there last year or whenever it may be, it's up to the adults in the room. And I use that very, very freely to say, no, you're not coming here right now. We're going to keep working with you. And when there's so many examples of players that have gone through that process and have come out on the other side, they're like really, really good. I just mentioned Farvari, right? Like Protas. I mean, yeah, Ryan Leonard's a different animal. Like that's just a different situation. He's ready, and yet at the same time, one of the best players in his age group anywhere in the world. And he said how, oh my Lord, he couldn't believe how challenging the NHL was coming in the playoffs. This is one of the very best players in his age group
Yeah.
coming in. And now he finds his way, he understands what it's about. So a little bit of seasoning. And to Tarek's point, overcooking. The only thing you don't want overcooked is your Thanksgiving turkey. Young players, young players need to be taken a little bit more. Give them more time, not less. And I'm not saying you don't give them a little taste of it to see what it's like, but at the same time, when you're asking a player to come in and the coaches and the other players on the team, they expect a player to come in to help them win and help them contribute to what the goals are. So if management gets impatient and starts pushing players because of outside noise or, oh, look at us, look, we made this great draft pick. Well, you start to create some features that aren't positive for your team, for your other players, and the fan base will figure it out soon enough. That player ain't ready.
Yeah. Okay, Craig, let's talk about some World Juniors here. It's my favorite time of
Okay.
year. I know you like it too. Cole Hudson.
Oh,
We know what he did last year for Team USA. We know who his brother is and the award he won last year. Tell me something about him and what we can expect when he gets here in DC.
well, people ask me lots about Cole, and they say, "What do you think he can be?" I said, "Well, he broke all of Lane's records. He's the he's the first defenseman to outright lead the World Junior Tournament in scoring. That was on the gold medal winning Team USA last year. I mean, Cole's brilliant. I mean, if you watch, I remember the first time I saw Cole play, it was like, okay, I didn't know Lane had a twin that was 2 years younger than him, but here's this fabulous player that thinks the game, that is creative, and you watch him play, and it's easy. So there's a perfect example of looking at a player and underestimating him and saying, well, he's only this tall, he's only this big. When it's all said and done, they control the game, they command the game, and that's again credit to the Washington Capitals for identifying a player and saying, listen, we can fit him in, and we got other good players that can support him. Listen, you're not going to be successful with a team full of Lane or Cole Hudsons. They need support too. But when you find a special player like Cole Hudson, and Cole Hudson is a special player, just like his older brother Lane is, that ability to control the game. And I don't know how many times I have to, when I do the Montreal Canadiens broadcast, and people want to say all the time, oh, Lane's not a good defender. Yes, he is a good defender. And Cole's a good defender too, because they know what their strengths are and they play to them. And they're not in a rush to get somewhere yesterday. They understand that there's stepping stones. But I think when Cole Hudson arrives with the Washington Capitals, the fans are going to get something that's eerily reminiscent of what the Montreal Canadiens fans saw in Lane Hudson.
Would you think he signs after BU season and maybe pushes for a spot right away?
Not knowing what his intentions are, I would be surprised, Tarek, if he doesn't sign, just like Lane. I mean, he's a player that, again, I'll go back to college players. If you haven't dominated at the college level, don't be ready to push to the NHL level. And because it's not easy. Like an extra year in college is good, but Cole's dominated college hockey.
Well, I was going to say, we even, sorry to cut you off, but we even saw that with Ryan Leonard last year. We thought he was going to step in and score all these goals, and we found out that the jump from NCAA Division I to grown men who feed their families by playing hockey, it's a whole different animal.
You're exactly right, Tarek. But again, when you've dominated college hockey, you might have a little bit of some growing pains when you first start out. Like Ryan that's hard for any player to step into the playoffs
big
and on a top team and try to do what you can do. But I think when you and we're talking about Ryan, who dominated college hockey and he still had some growing pains. But if you haven't dominated college hockey, those growing pains only run longer and run deeper. So I think watching Cole, I think that Cole would be ready. Maybe that's a better way for me to answer. I think he would be ready to sign with the Washington Capitals at the conclusion of a season this year with Boston University.
If he did that, how much do you think it would help having a guy like Ryan Leonard who was in his shoes just a year ago? Because like Tarek says, there's been so many times this year where Ryan has been so honest with us about, wow, yes, I didn't realize the jump. I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. And you can just see how much the game has slowed down for him and the success he has had, unfortunately, out with that injury right now. But just everything that it encompasses going from a college player to an NHL player, how much do you think it can help to have a guy to lean on who just went through it as well?
Oh, I think it's incredibly important, Katie. I think it's something that would be really, really significant for Cole. And Cole also has his older brother Lane to lean on. So he can go outside and lean on his older brother, and he can go inside and lean on Ryan. And the other thing about being with Ryan every day is that Ryan can just say, hey, don't worry. I know how you're feeling. Like, he can put his arm around him and say, no worries. Like I was this guy last year feeling exactly. So just that kind of, okay, take a deep breath. Just understand that it isn't easy. As we all know, it's a hard jump. but when you have people that can just help you navigate it, yeah, again, like a little bit of a safety net, I'll call it, underneath you, so you don't have to feel that, oh boy, if I fall, I don't have that safety net. And I think that would be incredibly important for Cole, and I think it's important for other young players to have that. And that's the other thing about the Washington Capitals prospect system. You look at how it's layered. I mean, Ovi, okay, listen, he's 40 years old. Everybody says he can't score anymore. He won't score anymore. Yeah, right. All you do by doubting Ovi is look stupid. So don't doubt Ovi, okay? But you look through like a John Carlson, and you look through that lineup of other players that are really good. So you're not throwing in young players into an older group. You're not throwing young players all in with younger players. There's a nice layer there for the Washington Capitals, which I think is really important as well. Back to your point about Cole and Ryan.
Craig, I want to ask you about a couple of forwards who are down in Hershey who are starting to knock on the door a little bit. Ilya Protas, Little Pro as they call him, Alexei's younger brother. He leads the Bears in scoring. I don't think he's even turned 20 years old. And then Andrew Crystal, who just continually lit up the WHL. He's starting to find his way down there. He's got an assist streak going. What do you expect from those two guys?
So let me just follow up on your assist streak with Andrew Crystal. Andrew Crystal is a brilliant playmaker, and when you put him on the power play, I mean he's outstanding. And last year in the CHL, playing where he did, there was no better power play player in the CHL in my opinion, and that includes Gavin McKenna and some other
Wow.
really good players. Andrew was an unbelievable and still is enough. So is that going to be the area of the game that he can really excel in? Yeah, I have no doubt about it. I think one of the things that Andrew has really worked hard at, when you're younger, you always have the puck. You always have the puck. It's not something you ever think about. But as you move up the levels and you're not the biggest guy, you're not the fastest skater, you have to learn, hey, I got to give up the puck a little bit. I thought that Andrew made leaps and bounds in his understanding of what's going to allow him to advance to the NHL in the last year and a half, with that understanding I got to give up the puck. And so no surprise to me, he's got a brilliant offensive mind, a brilliant hockey mind and power play mind. So no surprise to me. Don't be surprised if Ilya Protas is up at some point this year.
Yeah.
Like, he's brilliant. And that pick in and of itself is a brilliant pick. And we know what Alexei was. That was a brilliant pick. Ilya dominated the OHL last year in Windsor. He could be playing as a 19-year-old this year in the Ontario Hockey League, but he is clearly showing that he's ready for pro hockey by his record to this point in time in Hershey. And I'm not one, again, I almost feel like I'm tripping over my own words. You don't have to be somewhere yesterday, but Little Pro is gonna push to join Big Pro on the Washington Capitals, and just a fantastic player, like fantastic competitor, skills, and you think about what I call big player development. Alexei and Ilya are both players that had grown lots and maybe weren't as much of a finished product, didn't look as smooth. But the Washington Capitals say, wait a sec, these guys can think, they compete, they make plays, their skating's fine. Once they mature, everything's going to be really good. Yeah, the Protas brothers are going to be a big part of the Washington Capitals' future, and maybe sooner rather than later present.
I made a joke with Alexei recently. I said, "Are there any more Pros brothers in Belarus?" He was like, "Nope, that's the end of the line."
They're a third brother we can snag too.
Yeah.
No, they're gonna be a treat to watch. There's no question that just on the North American side alone, there is a lot of talent. But going back to World Juniors and international play for a second, I want to touch base on a few other names, guys like Maxim Schaefer, Milton Gastreen, some of the other ones playing for other countries in Europe coming up this tournament, and any other names that maybe Capitals fans, of course, your Ilya Protases and your Andrew Crystals and guys like that are really on the radar. But are there anyone else in the years to come that the Capitals fans should be listening for?
Well, let's talk about Milton Gastreen. And Milton Gastreen to me, is just an outstanding, what I would call competitive two-way center. He's a leader. He's somebody that dials into the competitive hard areas of the game. when I look back at a draft and even at the time, and I mean, I don't judge drafts after. I know there's teams all are evaluating different ways, but it's another example of a player that doesn't have a lot of flash and dash, but is loaded with substance. And I think in 2, 3 years' time, how did the Caps get Gastreen at that point in the draft? I really believe that that's going to be the case. His hockey sense is off the charts. His competitiveness is off the charts. I don't think he's going to be a huge offensive player, but he's going to be a player that is going to help you win in so many different ways. And he's a big time leader. Peter Sikora, who plays for Czechia and will be a key part of the Czechia team at the World Junior Tournament, they drafted him near the end of the draft. And I have no doubt in my mind, that Peter Sikora is going to play in the NHL because he has that edge.
Yeah.
He has that ability to make opponents uncomfortable. He's quick, he's fast, he's smart, he adds skill, but he's in it to win it. He dives right into where the rewards are, which happens to be where the hardest part of the game is. And I really believe that's a phenomenal pick. Eric Matejko, a big, strong left winger, a Latvian. I believe they drafted him in the 3rd round, and he's going to fit into a different area of your team. Like what I believe can be a really good, strong skating, heavy, hard, weighty winger that again makes opponents uncomfortable. Yeah, we know the skill can get people worried, but when you have big players, heavy players that can lean on you, and you're now going, I got to go back, I got to battle on the boards, I got to battle for a puck. It's about building out your team in different ways. Now, Eric's he's a 3rd round draft pick, but he like Sikora, I think that they're going to find their way to the NHL and be really good, productive players. We get down to the trade deadline and we talk about top teams. What could they use? Okay, like you're not getting top end skilled guys. You're looking for guys that round out your lineup, give you some of that skating, that weighty type play. Well, when you draft them, you don't have to go look for them at the trade deadline.
I want to ask you about Leon Mugli from Switzerland, defenseman, just was banged up in Hershey, but I believe he's healthy now and he's going over to the World Juniors. What do you like about his game?
I've always liked Leon. I think Leon is a perfect example of a player. I mean, he started playing in the World Juniors when he was 12 years old, I think. That's
this is his 3rd year, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you start to watch these guys, and because Leon was so advanced, you start to see him at the U18 level at a much younger age. So I feel like I've been watching Leon. Like I said, I joke since he was 12, but Leon's a really smart player and he's a really good skater. And when you watch how he plays the game, there might be some similarities to how Ferrari plays the game. He's going to need more time, not less. And because he dials into the hard areas and he's not quite physically ready or physically mature, I should say, you run into some of those challenges with injuries, playing against bigger, stronger players. But Leon's a smart player. He's a competitive player. And I believe that he has all the attributes and the potential to find his way to the NHL. And one of the things that I've always loved about Leon is that mistakes happen in a game. Players don't try to make mistakes, but sometimes you compound mistakes, not only in the moment, but you don't learn from your mistakes. Leon has never, to me, been a guy that compounds his mistakes, and he always learns from them. And that's what you want to see in the progression of young players. And I think Leon has really to play for the Washington Capitals in the future.
Well, Craig, this has been wonderful.
I got one more. I got one more.
Okay.
All right, I got one more.
No, go.
I know you pay attention to the senior team. Who from the Capitals is going to be playing for Team Canada at the Olympics?
Oh,
well, you know my answer to that, Todd. if I don't, well, I'll tell you what. Okay, so there's going to be a second guy that I think deserves lots of consideration, but Tommy Wilson. Come on, like Tommy Wilson's been phenomenal. Like if Canada's serious, and I know they're serious, I did a little bit of hyperbole right now, but Tom Wilson has to be on their team. I mean, not only from the skill, and one of the things that I find laughable, and I'll be very straightforward, I say this all the time, well, the international game, it'll be a little bit harder, and Tommy will be disciplined. do people not watch the Washington Capitals? Do people not watch that Tom Wilson is not some wild horse? He's not a renegade
Thank
out on
you.
the ice.
Yes.
He's a very disciplined,
Yeah,
very
he is.
good player. The offense is there. Obviously the power. I joke about this, Katie and Tarek, that like when Tom Wilson's on your team, and so let's just say Team Canada, right? I can guarantee you that no defenseman, no player that has to match up against Tom Wilson in the next game is having a comfortable afternoon nap. They just aren't. Because long before you get on the ice against him, he's already sitting here in your head, right? So there's no question in my mind. It'll be a shocker to me if he's not on Team Canada. The other player that I think has warranted every consideration to be on this team is Jacob Chikrin. I think Jacob has had a fantastic season. Thomas Harley's been hurt in Dallas. We're not talking about a huge, massive difference in terms of skill level. I mean, when we start to talk about this group of players, and Matt Schaefer's having a fantastic season in Long Island, and we know he's 18 years old. He just turned 18 years old. Chikrin's every bit as good a skater. He's every bit as good offensively. People say, well, Schaefer, they can have him around for 2030. The Olympics in 2026 aren't to get people ready for 2030.
Right.
It's to give everybody a chance to win today. So that's what it's about. And I think Jacob Chikrin, if it was me and I had a choice between Harley, Chikrin, and Schaefer, it would be Chikrin all day long.
How about Logan Thompson? Does he make the team?
Oh, well, yeah, sorry. Yeah, well, I think Logan's automatic.
Probably a starter, right?
Yeah. Well, Tarek, right now, I think it's gotten to the point with Jordan Binnington. We've all said that he deserves the grace to be on the team. I'm not so sure anymore. His play has been abysmal. His play's been near the bottom of the league. And to me, if he does get named to the team because of the grace, he's the third goalie. Kemper and Logan Thompson and Kemper, they're the two guys you got to go with, to me, in my view, because Binnington has not shown any level of play that would give anybody confidence that he should start for Team Canada at the Olympics.
Well, this has been wonderful. And I know all of us on this side agree with everything you just said there about Team Canada. So it'll be very interesting to see how all of that plays out. I believe New Year's Eve is when the final Canadian roster is coming out. So we will be looking forward to that. But of course, looking forward to a fun World Juniors tournament to come as well. So Craig, thank you so much for this.
Yeah, man. This is
a
great.
Wealth of knowledge. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, Katie and Tarek, always a pleasure to join you. And thanks for having me on. And you're right, the World Junior will be fun. You think about this, 4 nations, Stanley Cup playoffs, World Junior, Olympics, and then another fantastic Stanley Cup playoffs. It really is. We're in quite a 15-month span here of great hockey.
Absolutely. We really appreciate Craig's time, Tarek. That was a lot of great insight from him on a lot of names. There's so much to know about World Juniors. I feel like we only scratched the surface when you realize just how much goes into it, but nonetheless, going to be a lot of fun to watch a lot of different Capitals, future Capitals, be able to participate in this. But last time you and I did a show on Zoom, it was with Lyndon Lakovic, one of the Capitals' great prospects, of course, drafted this past year in the first round of the draft. He was lighting up the Western Hockey League. Unfortunately, his season cut short due to an upper body injury that will require surgery. I know last week he posted on social media a big thank you to Moose Shaw because, of course, he can turn pro next year. But you hate that the injury happened in a year where he was having so much success. But, ultimately he will be back and be a great part of this team, of this organization. But how do you think that maybe changes the timeline with Lakovic now?
Katie, I don't think it really does change the timeline for Lyndon. He's such a young player, and best wishes to Lyndon. Hopefully everything goes well and he stays on track with his recovery and is back on the ice in time to participate in a development camp and then, of course, in rookie camp. I would expect that he would be ready then. He was having a great season, so it is a shame that he wasn't able to finish it off. Something tells me he might have been on the move at some point, as well as a very highly coveted player in the WHL. But injuries are part of the game, as they say, and unfortunately, he had another one. So we'll see this summer. We'll get a better feel. But I think he's a player who the Capitals are very high on. But I'm not so sure that he was going to be on the roster next year. But he will be a pro. I would imagine with starting Hershey next year, and then we'll kind of see where things go.
Another one I want to mention before we pivot to pro and Hershey, because every time we talk about Linden, we also talk about Tarek Parasak as well. Another guy, they were right there neck and neck in the standings with each other. I know Linden was telling us on our conversation, they have some friendly banter on two
Yeah.
different teams, of course, but keep up with each other in texts and things like that. And it was some healthy competition. So he's another one that I'm sure you've checked in on as well. What are you seeing out of Parasak?
Yeah, Tarek's having another really good season. He's on pace for about 100 points once again. He's top 10 in the league in goals. So he's doing what he needs to do. The challenge for Tarek is going to be when he does get those opportunities here against the big boys, he's got to really seize those opportunities and show that he's progressing and getting closer to being able to contribute with the Capitals. But look, these guys are so young. Everyone develops at their own rate. And the fact that Tarek is in the WHL, one of the best leagues in North America for junior players, and is dominating another year. Eventually, it's all going to click for him at the pro level when he comes to one of our camps, and he's gonna ball out and he's going to make the team.
Well,
I would expect in the next couple of years he's going to really make a push.
when he's here and we have him on the show, I'm already mentally prepping for Tarek and Tarek and how many times I'm gonna go back and forth and mess that up because every time I say his name, I have to make the note from that one little syllable. But nonetheless, going to be a great guy here that we look forward to having on a lot more, getting to know him. But Tarek, now as we go to the professional side, the Hershey Bears, which you and I have enjoyed checking in on about every month up to this point in the season. And how could you not? Because they have some names: Leon Mugli, Ilya Protis, of course, Eric Smateko. He is aged out of making World Juniors, but another guy that I know every time we talk to Zach Fish, he always brings him up. Andrew Crystal. I mean, the list just goes on of the talent that is down there, what Hershey is doing. And again, these guys that are going to be future Capitals.
When we talk about the Capitals prospect pipeline, we're not just talking about the guys at the World Juniors. There's a whole other group of them that are in Hershey who are literally knocking on the door. They're just 130 miles away. They're so close they can actually feel it and smell it. So I would imagine that some of these players are going to get an opportunity in the second half of the season. Ilya Protis is a guy I think everyone has their eye on. He had that long goal streak there for a bit. He's been a little cooler lately, but that happens with goal scorers, right? He's still having a very, very good season. Ryan Chesley is another player who has had some ups and downs, but they're still really, really high on him. I think he's going to get an opportunity sooner than later. Andrew Crystal, he's been putting up points. But if you go and you look and listen to Coach Derek King's most recent press conference, talking about their last game, he's putting up points, but he still has a ways to go in terms of detail on the forecheck and winning board battles and D zone coverage and some other details of the game that really separate those guys from being Hershey players and being NHL players. So, Coach King essentially said, yeah, the points are awesome, but he's got to figure out this other part of his game too. So there are a bunch of guys down on the farm to be excited about. And, Brett Leeson is another name that comes up when I check in down there. He's putting up a lot of points. He's a 6'5" big bodied player who got some games with Anaheim when he got claimed off waivers a couple of years ago. He's now back in the organization. Strong, big, got a little bit of edge to his game, right wing. I would imagine that at some point he's going to get an opportunity to up here in Washington. Is he going to be a full-time player? I don't know. The Caps are pretty stacked up front. But injuries happen, and I think he's starting to push his way to the front of the line down there with the Bears.
Well, we mentioned the stats, but one thing I want to ask you, Tarek, is quick little story time here. Thanksgiving Day, Ilya Protis came up to not only have Thanksgiving with, of course, Big Pro and his family. He brought Alexander Suzdalev, another teammate, and I think more excited to see his brother. He was more excited to see Bogdan Trinyev, who, of course, is his roommate in
Oh,
Hershey.
bogey.
Just Papa Bogey, exactly. We learned that from a few episodes ago, but he just made his NHL debut
Good.
earlier this week. You have him come up. We've talked about this too. He's able to, Ilya, I'm saying, able to talk with the coaches, even if it was a few minutes, face to face, things like that. But he comes up with Suslov. He comes up to see Bogdan Trinyev. I interview him. He's telling me just all their shenanigans down there, how they were building furniture, things like that. So I mention all of this to say you got to think too, yes, these guys are lighting it up on the ice as a group, but how important is it? The relationships, the friendships, the way that they are truly growing up together through the AHL. How much of an impact do you think that'll make when if they come to the Capitals at relatively the same timeline? To already know each other, to already have established that chemistry. It's not like you're pulling guys from all over. This is a group that we talk so much about the Capitals being tight knit. These guys down there are already getting to form these relationships years ahead of coming to this team. How much do you think that'll pay off in the long run?
Yeah, Katie, I've seen it a number of times in my 2 decades plus covering this team. Sometimes you can, I don't want to say luck out and get the right chemistry when you sign guys from other teams or execute trades. But there is a little bit of luck involved because you really don't know how a guy is going to fit in your room until he actually gets there and starts talking to your leadership and talking to your coaches and just seeing how he gets along with everybody. The best way to build a team that's going to have success over the long term, or yeah, best, but also probably the surest way is to draft guys within a 2-3 year span and then have them go through the minor league system and hopefully have a great experience with their minor league team, maybe even win a championship. We've seen that happen before. John Carlson and Mike Green and those guys all played in Hershey together, won titles together in Hershey, and then when they came up here, they were like, it was plug and play. They were ready to go. They knew each other. They had a comfort level with one another, and they were able to kind of grow up together, have the same struggles together. It really mattered.
Absolutely. Well, we see it here every day. Like I said, it's we've gone down to Hershey together. We've seen it there, but it's always fun when they can come up. It's short times, but be able to see it up here because you can tell, I know I can tell every time I talk to them, and you can do the same, that there's definitely something special brewing in this organization in the years to come. So one last thought, I feel like every time we talk about prospects, I always leave you off with, all right, if you had to pinpoint one to kind of watch throughout the next few months until we get to the next prospect episode, who would it be? I think last time you said Ryan Chesley. So pick someone else this time. Who else would be on your radar, watch throughout these winter months?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ilya Protas. I feel like even though he's cooled off a little bit here lately, he's probably the closest, at least amongst the forwards, to being ready to contribute here. He's probably going to need some people to get banged up, and we don't want that to happen. But if that does happen, I do think he's going to get an opportunity to show what he can do up here. I mean, when he was on fire, I know internally they were like, well, this organization is really likes to overcook their prospects. They'd rather guys be over prepared rather than under prepared. But with the way Ilya is playing right now, he's showing them that he has enough detail in his game and he's physically strong enough that he's going to be knocking on the door sooner or later. So that's who I'm going to have my eye on.
Well, hopefully he got problem number one solved. That was getting a new ride to the rink because Papa Bogey was his ride. And he told me that, yeah, he had some calling on teammates to do now. But I think all is well there. I know they're so excited to see their friend up here now. But Tarek, thank you so much as always. Always fun when we can talk about the prospects. And you, of course, provide a wealth of knowledge. So appreciate you doing this and appreciate you fans listening to another episode at home. We'll be right back with you for, of course, another edition of Rink Report next week. But in the meantime, get ready to catch the Capitals and the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight. Thanks, everyone.